Hello, amazing fourth graders. We're here for lesson 6.7, where we are going to be comparing fractions using common denominators. As always, here's everything that you need. Your I can statement is I can compare fractions using common denominators. So in a previous lesson, we compared fractions, whether they were greater than, equal to, or less than each other using benchmark fractions. But benchmark fractions doesn't always work. That's why this strategy is more accurate. Just like estimating isn't an exact answer, but it can help you, we're going to be doing the same thing. Common denominator is going to help us find an exact answer when we compare fractions. So in order to compare fractions with common denominators, we need to review how to find common denominators. Now, let's write 2/5 and 2/3 as a pair of fractions with common denominators. Denominators down. Denominators, remember we use multiples. Don't get it confused with simplifying fractions where you use factors. Denominators use multiples. So step number 1 is to list the multiples of both denominators. If you look at 2/5 and 2/3, the part of that fraction that's down is your 5 and your 3. So you need to list your multiples of 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on, and 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and so on. The next thing that you do is you find a common multiple. What do they have in common? If you want to find a common denominator, you need a common multiple. So as you can see, 5 times 3 gives you 15, and 3 times 5 gives you 15 as well. That's our common multiple. So that's going to be our common denominator. So we're not changing the value of 2/5. We're just rewriting it in an equivalent fraction. So step number 3 is to multiply to make new fractions with the same denominator. So 5 times 3, we need anything we do to the denominator, we must do to the numerator. So we need to multiply 2 times 3, that gives us 6. And 3 times 5 gives us 15. So we need to multiply the numerator 2 by 5, and that gives us 10. So 6/15 and 10/15, they're equivalent fractions to 2/3 and 2/5. And now it's really easy to compare. Well, which one's greater? Or which one's less than? I know 6/15 is less than 10/15, so 2/5 is less than 2/3. Okay, so now I'm moving to my math notebook. Please make sure you have your math notebook set up. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you have your I can statement. Your I can statement is I can compare fractions using common denominators. So we need some review from a previous lesson where we're taking fractions and making equivalent fractions by changing the denominator, right? Okay, so we have 2/5 and we have 1/3. First step is to find your multiples of 5 and your multiples of 3, okay? So my multiples of 5, 5, 10, 15, and 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. We have 15 and 15. Those are common multiples. They are going to become my common denominator. Okay. Now, another thing, when you multiply 5 times some number to give you 15, 5 times 3 equals 15. Anything you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. Okay, so 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 3 is 6. So 2/5 is equivalent to 6/15. That is an equivalent fraction. Now, 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gives me 15. So 1 times 5 becomes 5/15. Now I can compare 6/15 and 5/15 much more easily than I could compare 2/5 and 1/3. Well, 6 is greater than 5. I only need to look at the numerator if I have common denominators. So that must mean that 2/5 is greater than 1/3. Okay, remember, we're comparing fractions, making it really simple. If we have the same denominator, then all we have to do is look and compare the numerator, just like you would with a regular whole number. Okay, so now we need to compare. Let's take a look at one more example, and then I'll ask that you try some on your own. You have 2/8, and we want to compare that to 3/5. What's the first step? Multiples. You need your multiples of 8, 8, 16, 24, 32, and 40, and your multiples of 5, all the way until you find a common multiple. So here you have 40 as your common multiple. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you know when to stop and find your common multiple? You can use some of your divisibility rules. 8 and 5, well, I know that 5 has to end in 0 or 5, so I kept going until I've had a number that I went into 0, and it's a little bit of trial and error. So 8 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 40, our common multiple, becomes our new common denominator. 8 times 5 equals 40, so 2 times 5. 2 eighths becomes 10 40ths. Okay? Now, 5 times, and you might have noticed, you can just multiply this denominator by that denominator to find a common denominator. So 5 times 8 is 40, and 3 times 8 is 24. Now I can compare the numerator, 10 and 24, and I know that 10 is less than 24, so that must mean that 2 eighths is less than 3 fifths. 2 eighths is less than 3 fifths. So what I'd like for you to do right now is to pause the video and to give the next examples in your math notebook a try. Go ahead and pause the video and compare 4/6 to 3/4 and 4/5 to 3/4. Thank you for giving those problems a try. So, as you can see right here, I have my multiples of 6 and my multiples of 4 for my denominators to try and find a common denominator to make it easy to compare these numbers. Now, you'll notice I did 6, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. 6 times 4 is 24. And I did 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times and got 24. I could use 24 as a common denominator, but actually, there's a smaller common denominator, so 12. So that's what I'll be using, 12 for this example. So as you can see, I use 12 as my common denominator. 6 times 2 gives me 12, so I need to multiply my numerator times 2 to give me 8. And 3 times 4 gives me 12, so I need to multiply my numerator times 3. It's easy to compare. Not 8 is less than 9, so that must mean that 4/6 is less than 3/4. Okay, and in the last example, 20 was my common denominator. I ended up with the fractions with common denominators of 16 20ths and 15 20ths. Well, 16 is greater than 15, so 4/5 must be greater than 3/4. All right, awesome job today. Have an amazing rest of your Osprey.